Have you ever wondered why the person who says they don't need anyone is the same person who can't stop thinking about someone who makes them feel understood? Why is it that the most emotionally distant people, the ones who pull away, stay silent, and act unbothered, end up getting deeply attached to very specific kinds of people? It doesn't make sense on the surface. Avoidants look strong, independent, untouchable. They say they love their space. They say they don't like too much emotion. They say they don't want drama. And they mean it. But here is the truth most people never see. Behind that calm face, behind that controlled voice, behind that I'm fine energy, there is a nervous system that learned one powerful lesson very early in life. Closeness is dangerous. Not because love is bad, but because love once felt overwhelming, unpredictable, unsafe. Maybe their feelings were ignored. Maybe vulnerability was punished. Maybe they had to grow up too fast. Maybe they learned that depending on someone leads to disappointment. So they adapted. They became self-sufficient. They became logical. They became emotionally contained. They built walls, not small walls, strong walls, silent walls. And those walls worked. They protected them from rejection. They protected them from chaos. They protected them from feeling too much. But here is what psychology teaches us. When a child suppresses a need, the need does not disappear. It goes underground. It waits. Avoidants are not people without needs. They are people who train themselves not to show them. Deep inside, beneath all the independence and distance, there is still a human hunger. Not hunger for attention, not hunger for control, but hunger for something much deeper. Safety without pressure, connection without suffocation, love without losing themselves. And this is where everything changes. Because even the most avoidant heart still wants to be seen. It just wants to be seen gently. They don't want someone who demands constant reassurance. They don't want someone who forces emotional conversations every day. They don't want intensity that feels like a storm. Their nervous system is already tired. They want peace. They want someone who does not invade their space, but also does not disappear. Someone who can sit in silence without panic. Someone who can express feelings without accusation. Someone who does not chase, but also does not withdraw. And when they meet someone like that, something unexpected happens inside them. Their body relaxes. For the first time in a long time, they don't feel like they have to defend themselves. For the first time, closeness does not feel like a trap. It feels calm, and calm is rare. When you have lived your whole life protecting yourself from emotional chaos, calm feels like oxygen. It feels like finally putting down armor you have been carrying for years. This is the hidden hunger avoidants never admit. They want connection, but only the kind that does not threaten their identity. They want love, but only the kind that respects their freedom. They want intimacy, but only the kind that does not demand they become someone else. And here is the powerful shift. The moment an avoidant feels emotionally safe without pressure, something in their brain lights up. The same brain that once said, "Stay away," now whispers, "Maybe this is different." That whisper is powerful, because for someone who spent years convincing themselves they don't need anyone, discovering that they can feel safe with someone is life-changing. It challenges their entire identity. And identity is everything. Human psychology shows us that we protect our identity more than we protect our happiness. Avoidance built an identity around independence. I don't rely on anyone. I don't get too attached. I'm better on my own. But when they meet someone who makes connection feel safe, their identity starts to crack, and cracks let light in. This is why they get pulled in deeper than people expect, not because they are weak, not because they are confused, but because they are finally experiencing connection without threat. And when something heals a wound you have carried for years, you don't just like it, you attach to it. You hold on to it quietly. You think about it more than you admit. You replay conversations in your head. You feel the absence when it's gone. That is not neediness. That is a nervous system recognizing safety. If you understand this, you understand something most people never will. Avoidants are not heartless. They are hyperprotective. They are not emotionless. They are emotionally overloaded from the past. And when they find someone who communicates in a way that lowers their defenses instead of triggering them, it feels rare. And rare things become valuable. Now here is the promise. If you stay until the end of this video, you will understand exactly what communication style creates That sense of safety, why it feels addictive, and how this knowledge can either build powerful connection or destroy it completely. Because once you understand the psychology behind this pattern, you don't just see relationships the same way again. You see people differently. And when you see clearly, you move differently. And when you move differently, everything changes. Now think about this. If someone has spent years protecting their inner world, what kind of voice would make them slowly open the door? Not a loud one, not a demanding one, not a dramatic one, a steady one. After understanding the hidden hunger inside an avoidant heart, the next piece becomes clear. It is not intense passion that pulls them closer. It is emotional steadiness. It is the presence of someone who does not rush them, test them, or overwhelm them. Avoidant personalities are extremely sensitive to pressure. The moment they sense expectation, their body reacts before their mind does. Their chest tightens. Their thoughts become distant. Their instinct tells them to create space. This reaction is not personal, it is survival. Their nervous system learned long ago that too much emotional intensity equals loss of control, and control, to them, feels like safety. So when they meet someone who communicates in a grounded and balanced way, something unusual happens. Their system does not activate in defense. It does not prepare for impact. It does not look for an escape route. It stays calm, and calmness is powerful. The people who affect avoidance the most usually share certain traits. They speak clearly. They say what they feel without blame. They listen without interrupting. They respect silence. They do not push for instant answers. They allow space without turning it into punishment. This type of communication sends a strong message. You are free here. Freedom is magnetic to someone who fears being trapped. When there is no chasing, no emotional explosions, no constant checking, the avoidant mind begins to relax. They stop scanning for danger. They stop planning their exit. They begin to stay present, and presence builds attachment. Psychology explains this through nervous system regulation. When two people interact, their bodies influence each other. If one person is anxious, the other often absorbs that tension. But if one person is emotionally regulated, patient, and composed, that stability can calm the other. Avoidants respond deeply to that regulation. It feels like sitting near a quiet lake after living in a storm. They may not say it out loud. They may still act cool, but inside something shifts. They begin associating that person with ease, with mental clarity, with relief. Relief is addictive, not in a dramatic way, in a subtle way. They start looking forward to conversations. They appreciate the predictable tone. They notice how disagreements do not turn into chaos. They realize they are not being forced to perform emotionally. For someone who is used to defending their independence, this feels revolutionary. And here's the key part. The calm communicator does not try to fix them, does not analyze them, does not demand access to every hidden thought. They simply remain consistent. Their words match their actions. Their reactions stay balanced. Consistency builds trust. Trust lowers walls. Walls come down slowly, not in one moment, not in a grand confession, but in small steps. A longer text, a deeper answer, a shared memory, a slight vulnerability. These small openings matter because avoidants do not fall quickly. They lean in gradually, and every time they lean in without negative consequences, their brain rewires a little. It learns that closeness does not always mean pain. That lesson is life-changing. But here is where the attachment deepens even more. The calm communicator does not take distance personally. When an avoidant pulls back to recharge, they do not respond with anger. They do not accuse. They do not threaten to leave. They stay secure. This stability sends another powerful signal. Your need for space does not scare me. That message creates emotional safety at a level most people do not understand. When someone feels accepted without being chased, judged, or pressured, they begin to attach in a way that feels natural instead of forced. It is not about grand romantic gestures. It is about emotional environment. Avoidants become deeply connected to those who create an environment where they can breathe. And once they associate a person with breathing room, steadiness, and quiet understanding, the bond strengthens. They may still value independence. They may still need time alone. But now, their solitude includes thoughts of someone who does not threaten it. That is powerful, because instead of feeling like they must choose between connection and autonomy, they experience both at the same time. And when someone experiences a relationship that does not challenge their core need for freedom, their defenses soften. They begin initiating more. They start sharing more details. They become protective of the bond, all because of communication that feels safe. This is not manipulation, it is regulation. It is emotional maturity meeting emotional caution. And when those two meet, something rare forms. The avoidant no longer feels like they are losing themselves. They feel like they are expanding. They are not being chased. They are being understood. They are not being cornered. They are being respected. And respect to them feels like love. This is why certain communicators stand out in their lives, not because they are louder, not because they are more intense, but because they are steady. In a world full of emotional noise, steadiness feels powerful. And when someone who fears losing control finds a connection that does not take it away, attachment grows naturally, quietly, deeply, strongly. That is how the hook begins, not with drama, with peace. And this is where everything turns, because what begins as comfort can slowly become something far more intense. When a person who has guarded their emotions for years finally finds someone whose presence feels balanced and secure, their system does something unexpected. It attaches not through fireworks, not through obsession at first sight, but through relief, through the absence of threat, through the quiet experience of feeling emotionally settled. That settled feeling becomes important. The human brain is wired to repeat experiences that reduce stress. When tension drops, the body rewards itself. Chemicals linked to bonding and pleasure are released. The mind takes note. It marks the source. It remembers who was there when the storm inside went silent. For someone who rarely feels that internal quiet, this effect is powerful. But here is the psychological twist. Avoidant personalities do not bond through intensity. They bond through contrast. If their past relationships were filled with pressure, emotional highs and lows, or constant demands, then a grounded connection feels dramatically different. The difference creates impact. The impact creates memory. The memory creates attachment. Now imagine something changes. Imagine the steady communicator becomes inconsistent, not intentionally harmful, just less predictable. Slower replies, mixed signals, subtle emotional distance. The tone shifts slightly. The certainty fades. For most people, this might create mild confusion. For an avoidant, it can activate something much deeper. The same nervous system that relaxed now senses instability. The calm they associated with that person feels threatened. And when safety feels uncertain, the brain does not stay neutral. It becomes alert. This is where attachment can turn into fixation. Psychology calls this intermittent reinforcement. When rewards are given unpredictably, the brain works harder to regain them. It increases focus. It replays interactions. It searches for patterns. It wants to restore what once felt secure. The avoidant who once valued distance may now find themselves thinking constantly about the person who disrupted their emotional equilibrium. Why? Because it was never about dramatic romance. It was about internal regulation. They were not addicted to compliments or attention. They were attached to the internal state that person helped create, the mental stillness, the emotional balance, the sense of control combined with connection. When that state becomes unstable, the mind tries to solve it. They may not express it openly. They may not beg or chase in obvious ways, but inside there is increased mental activity. Questions arise. What changed? Did I do something? How do I bring this back? This inner tension feels uncomfortable, and humans are wired to escape discomfort. So the avoidant, who once avoided closeness, may now lean forward more than expected. They might initiate conversations. They might seek reassurance in subtle ways. They might monitor responses more carefully, not because they suddenly became emotionally needy, but because their brain wants to recover the feeling of steadiness it once experienced. This is the trap. It is not obsession with a person's face, voice, or lifestyle. It is obsession with a lost emotional state. The calm communicator unknowingly became associated with balance. When that balance disappears, the avoidant does not just miss the individual, they miss how they felt around them. And here is another layer. Avoidants often pride themselves on being self-contained. They believe they do not depend on others for emotional stability. So when they realize that someone influenced their internal world so deeply, it challenges their self-image. That challenge creates even more focus. The mind tries to regain control. It tries to analyze every detail. It wants to understand why the connection shifted. This analysis can feel intense. It is important to understand this clearly. The fixation is not about weakness. It is about contrast and conditioning. When peace is rare, its absence feels loud. When stability is new, its removal feels threatening. And because avoidants are not used to confronting these internal waves directly, the experience can feel overwhelming. They may withdraw outwardly while thinking inwardly. They may act detached while feeling unsettled inside. The conflict between their external calm and internal restlessness increases the mental loop. The more unpredictable the interaction becomes, the stronger the loop can grow. Uncertainty stimulates the brain's reward system in a powerful way. It keeps attention locked. It creates anticipation. It fuels imagination. It increases emotional investment. This is how a grounded connection can transform into a psychological attachment that feels almost addictive. Not through drama, through inconsistency after stability. And this explains something many people misunderstand. Avoidants do not become attached because someone chased them relentlessly. They become deeply focused when someone first made them feel secure, then became unpredictable. The brain wants resolution. It wants to restore the original sense of order. And until it does, it keeps searching. This cycle can either become destructive or transformative. If awareness is missing, the avoidant may stay trapped in confusion, trying to regain a feeling instead of building something healthy. But if awareness is present, something powerful can happen. They can recognize that what they truly seek is not a person's approval. It is emotional steadiness. It is internal balance. It is connection without chaos. And once that realization begins to form, growth becomes possible, because the real breakthrough is understanding that safety should not depend on unpredictability. True strength is learning to create internal calm rather than chasing it in someone else. And that realization changes everything. Now everything becomes clear. What looked like emotional detachment was never a lack of depth. What looked like indifference was never absence of feeling. It was protection. It was adaptation. It was survival shaped by old experiences. And once you see that, the real lesson begins. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, understand this truth with strength. You are not craving a person. You are craving inner stability. You are searching for a connection that does not threaten your sense of self. You want closeness that does not feel like surrender. There is nothing wrong with that desire. Every human being wants connection without losing identity. The difference is that avoidant personalities learn to protect identity at all costs. Independence became armor. Emotional control became a shield. Distance became a strategy. But armor is heavy. Shields block not only danger, but also warmth. Growth begins when you realize that safety does not have to come from keeping everyone at a distance. Real security comes from building strength inside yourself. When you develop the ability to regulate your own emotions, you no longer depend on someone else's behavior to feel steady. This is maturity. When you can sit with discomfort without running, when you can express needs without fear of being trapped, when you can handle closeness without panic, you step into a higher level of emotional power. And power is not about controlling others. It is about mastering yourself. If you are the person who naturally communicates with balance and composure, understand your influence. Your grounded energy has impact. Your ability to remain centered affects those around you. But with that influence comes responsibility. Do not use emotional steadiness as a tool to create dependency. Do not offer warmth only to withdraw it. Do not turn predictability into a game. True strength is not measured by how deeply someone becomes attached to you. It is measured by how safe they feel growing beside you. Healthy connection is not about creating hunger. It is about building trust. It is about showing that closeness and freedom can exist together without conflict. When two people bring awareness into a relationship, something powerful forms. One person learns that intimacy does not erase identity. The other learns that consistency should not be used to control outcomes. Both grow. And growth is the real goal. Attachment styles are not life sentences. They are patterns shaped by history. Patterns can change. Brains can rewire. Emotional responses can evolve. But evolution requires courage. It requires facing the fear of losing control. It requires admitting that independence alone does not create fulfillment. It requires stepping into vulnerability without seeing it as weakness. Vulnerability is not surrender. It is alignment. It is choosing honesty over protection. It is allowing yourself to be known without hiding behind distance. When you choose that path, relationships transform. Instead of chasing the return of a feeling, you start creating stability within. Instead of reacting to every shift in tone, you respond with awareness. Instead of fearing closeness, you approach it with boundaries and clarity. That is emotional evolution. And when you reach that level, something remarkable happens. You no longer become fixated on people who disrupt your balance. You are drawn toward those who match your growth. You stop looking for someone to calm your nervous system. You become calm on your own. Then you connect from strength, not from need. This changes the dynamic completely, because when you do not depend on another person to feel secure, love becomes a choice instead of a coping mechanism. Choice is powerful. It means you stay not because you fear losing peace, but because the connection adds value to a life that is already stable. It means you communicate openly without fear of being controlled. It means you allow space without seeing it as abandonment. This is what secure attachment looks like. It is not perfect. It is not without challenges, but it is rooted in awareness. It is grounded in respect. It is built on mutual understanding. And this is the final transformation. Avoidants are not destined to repeat cycles of distance and fixation. Calm communicators are not meant to carry the emotional weight of others. Both can rise to a higher level. The journey begins with recognizing the pattern. It deepens with accountability, it strengthens with practice, and it solidifies with intention. You are not defined by your past reactions. You are defined by the choices you make after understanding them. So choose growth. Choose honesty over avoidance. Choose stability over unpredictability. Choose connection that empowers instead of controls. Because the strongest relationships are not built on emotional addiction. They are built on conscious effort, mutual regulation, and respect for individuality. When independence and intimacy stop fighting each other, harmony becomes possible. And harmony is not something you chase, it is something you build.